Hello there and welcome to a new episode of Talk Music Talk with Boice. I am Boice and this is my podcast you are listening to. For that first time listener, Talk Music Talk is a weekly music interview podcast where I have long form conversations with people connected to music from different genres and different backgrounds, both established and emerging music therapists, music journalists, singers, singer-songwriters. And on this new episode, I had the pleasure of speaking to Corbin Reiff. He is an author and a journalist. He has a new book coming out. It is called Total Fucking Godhead, and it is the biography of Chris Cornell. You know Chris Cornell, the great vocalist and songwriter of Soundgarden, Audioslave, and much more, who passed away 3 years ago from a suicide. The book chronicles his life with a focus on the music, from growing up in Seattle and learning his first instrument, which was the drums, through his journey as an incredible musician, his inspirations, his craft. There is song analysis, and it is just a complete celebration of his life in music, in an absorbing read that's always respectful to his legacy. This is Corbin's second book. His first was Lighters in the Sky, the all-time greatest concerts. This conversation was recorded through Zoom because apparently that's how we are doing podcasts these days, but that's okay. Here it is, without further ado, my conversation with Corbin Reiff. Enjoy. So when did you first hear Soundgarden, hear Chris Cornell's voice, and was it an immediate attraction?
Yeah, I grew up in the 90s, so it seemed like, Soundgarden and those bands, from Seattle were always kind of just in the ether, on MTV, and we're just kind of always around. The Black Hole Sun video was definitely one that I remember from my childhood, just having MTV on, and that video would roll in and around, and it was always so mesmerizing, watching those crazy faces, light up with the smiles and everything. And it always seemed so intense. And I've always kind of been drawn to the more of the darker aspect of some music and stuff. And that psychedelic imagery in the music just really grabbed me. And then, just going up through life, revisiting those albums, in high school, listening to Audioslave when that first came out and realizing, oh, it's the same guy from Soundgarden. And that kind of just blew my mind. And I've been a fan as long as I can remember, really. And when he passed, it hit me in a way that a lot of other celebrity deaths just hadn't really hit me before. And just really felt that his legacy had been really underrepresented in the media. And I just wanted to do whatever I could to kind of correct the record and show what an incredible artist he was across his entire life.
Okay. Was there a particular song or album, like the first thing you bought?
I think Black Hole Sun was probably the first one I kind of recognized. Okay. Chris Cornell's a person who kind of always, he morphed throughout his entire career. If you kind of listen to his discography, the music always changed. Bad Motorfinger to Temple of the Dog was a different record. Temple of the Dog to, Super Unknown was a different record. Then you have Audioslave. Then he's making James Bond songs. Yeah. Then he's working with Timbaland. It's wild how many different phases that he went through in his career. So, it was almost like you're constantly rediscovering him. He was always kind of showing you a different side of himself. There are just all these moments that I think about through my life, where his music kind of came up, like the Collateral movie, with the Michael Mann movie with, Shadow and the Sun comes out, and it's so, crazy intense. And, the same thing with, My Name and James Bond and watching that and knowing that he met the Queen and stuff, before the movie premiere. I mean, it's hard to say there was one particular album just because he kind of always kept pushing his art and always kept showing different sides of him, different sides of his creativity, and was always impressive to me. And that voice, I mean, I can wax rhapsodic about that voice for hours. I mean, just what he could do, it was incredible.
So in the book you talk about, he was, there's always some concern, will this audience carry to this next project because it's a different sound? Were you one of those fans that you were fine, with all the different ways his music changed, the different settings?
Yeah, I try not to be a purist. I try not to be someone who gets caught up in one specific, designation of, what an artist wants to be. If you respect an artist, you kind of try to follow them along their journey, whatever twists and turns they want to take. And I was always a person who, maybe Scream aside, I didn't know that didn't click with me from the beginning, but most of his albums, the way he sang, the way he wrote, it really resonated with me more than a lot of other bands, even other Seattle bands. He took chances that a lot of people wouldn't take. He stepped out in different ways that, he got a lot of shit for at the time, but was, Audioslave's a great example. A lot of people when Audioslave first dropped were just, oh, fuck a supergroup. Can I swear on this, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So, fuck the supergroup thing, manufactured, whatever. But, and Pitchfork gave it like a 1.6, I think, out of the box. And you listen to that record now, and it's like, what was everyone so mad about? Show Me How to Live, Gasoline, The Last Remaining Light, Getaway Car. Those are songs that are just incredible. And, seeing the potential in those three guys, and in going along for that ride, as much shit he might have gotten for it, those songs still stand up, and I think that's kind of, the kind of person he was. He didn't necessarily care in the short term what people thought as much as, diving into projects that interested him.
Okay. You had, you mentioned that he's underrepresented for his work. And why do you think that is? Like, your book actually is needed because I think he said there's only one other book on him?
Yeah, there was one other book about Soundgarden. I think it was written in 1997, and I don't think the band had been broken up yet at the time it was published. So there's a lot of the story that people don't know, and I don't know why he's underrepresented. I think that he was a very private person. He didn't like to reveal too much of himself, and that was one of the challenges in terms of writing the book, is trying to talk to as many people that knew him as possible. To try to gain more insight into what he was like as a person. But even people that knew him for decades would tell me, like, I wouldn't say I really knew, quote unquote, knew Chris. He kept to himself a lot. And it definitely made it a challenge when someone doesn't want to reveal a lot of themselves. And, but at the same time, this, for lack of a better term, one of the more stable people in the Seattle scene, someone who a lot of people thought had their shit together. And he got a lot of shit for a lot of different stuff, going back to Scream, Trent Reznor picking a fight with him on Scream, that album, and taking a task over his choices to do that. It just didn't seem like he was as interesting a topic to a lot of people as, Kurt Cobain or Pearl Jam and all the stuff that they did. And, Lane Staley and Alice in Chains and that story. And, but I disagree. I think his story is incredible. I think that, it needs to be told. And I hope that when people read the book, they come away with a better appreciation for his artistry and the chances that he took and the choices that he made.
Were there things about him you learned that you didn't know beforehand prior to researching for this book?
Yeah, there's lots of stuff that I definitely learned. I mean, it's almost a 400-page book, and I hope that people learn a lot about Chris. But, the thing that I think that would not surprise people, but I think that people will be, interested in is just funny he was. There's this image of him as this intense, screaming dude, Slaves and Bulldozers, Cochise, all these Jesus Christ poets, all these, really caustic rock songs. But, and at the same time, the troubadour, playing guitar by himself. And, but he was just a really funny dude. Like he was very sarcastic, very caustic, willing to, dress up as the literal Black Hole Sun to go to a Halloween party and was very, very quick with the joke. And I think that, people will kind of hopefully see a more human side of Chris rather than just, the guy climbing the steel cage and outshining video or whatever.
What was your process for putting the book together? Because it's like you had some interviews you were able to do, and then you took like quotes and stuff from other interviews he had done in the past. Like, how did you put all that together? Seems like very daunting to do that.
It definitely was. I guess my main, the thing that I wanted to really do the most is let Chris speak for himself as much as possible. He won't ever get to write an autobiography. He's not going to be able to do that. And as much as I could, I tried to dig and find every single shred of anything that Chris Cornell ever said about his music, his life, anything, any topic, his thoughts on stuff, whether that was going through decades old interviews, listening to concert bootlegs just for the stage banter, where he told stories about his life and stuff, just anything I can get my hands on so that I could allow Chris to tell, his story and his thoughts on things as much as possible. That was kind of my baseline. And I put together this whole big, template of stuff and interviews and clips and everything so that I can kind of flesh out what his story looked like before I even got to writing.
Okay.
And then from there, I've talked to people and went to other interviews and stuff to kind of try to fill in the gaps as much as possible. Where he either didn't have an opinion or didn't remember things, or it might have conflicted with the actual record of what happened. But yeah, once I kind of figured out, like what Chris said about things and what things mattered to him and what was important, that's kind of where I tried to hit as hard as possible to kind of give people a sense of what he thought about his own life and his choices on doing things. And why did he, make Temple of the Dog? How did Andy Wood's death impact him? How hard did that hit him? That's kind of what I kind of did. And for the next almost 3 years, just kind of diving in and immersing myself in his world and trying to understand him as best as possible and relay, what his life actually looked like.
Okay. How long did it take to do that initial outline?
Oh man. A long time. And I was kind of adding to it as I went, as I was learning more from other people about Chris, I would find a different thing over here, over there. So the outline, I think it ran like almost 100,000 words, maybe even more, just of things that Chris said. And I kept adding to it constantly until it was about 150,000. So I would say about a year and a half, I was kind of assembling it and then adding to it and then applying it to where it needed to apply and taking from it what I needed to take from it.
Okay. Did you find out a lot about him through his lyrics? Was he a confessional songwriter?
Somewhat. It's interesting. You could like a song like Outshine, looking California, feeling Minnesota. That's a very specific lyric to Chris Cornell. One day he was looking in the mirror and he was wearing, beach bum outfit, shorts, t-shirt. And, I think it was on 91 or 91, 92 or somewhere in Europe. And he was miserable at the time, but he looked at himself in the mirror and he didn't see any of that misery. So looking California, feeling Minnesota, so there's definitely a lot of Chris in his lyrics, but as much as possible, not as much as possible, but oftentimes he would write songs through characters that he created in his head or narratives that he made in his head, but there'd still be a piece of him in there. It just kind of, you had to, depending on the song or what he was saying, you'd kind of discover a little bit of him.
Oh, okay. And just sort of getting a sense of how he got into music. You talk about his background, where he grew up, how he first got into music.
Yeah, so he was a drummer at first. A lot of people, imagine that he started out singing, but no, singing came way later. He started out as a drummer. He tried guitar. His brother Peter tried, could play Stairway to Heaven, and Chris wanted to learn Stairway to Heaven, but Peter told him he wasn't ready yet, so he played John Denver songs on guitar. But the guitar didn't click with him at first at all. It was the drums that really did. And he was working at a place in Seattle called Ray's Boathouse, and working with fish guts and stuff and restaurants and everything like that. And played in different bands. His first band was called the Jones Street Band. He played drums in that band. And then, from there, gigged around town until he linked up with a guy named Hiro Yamamoto, who played bass, and a guy named Kim Thiel, who played guitar. And they became a power trio. Chris played drums. It was called Soundgarden. Eventually, he decided I can't sing and play drums at the same time. So they got a new drummer in, and the rest was history.
It seems like he was always, or at least he wasn't comfortable with the whole sexy image and being seen as like a sex god, even though he performed with his shirt off all the
time. Totally. It was something he he definitely grappled with throughout his life. He obviously understood that, he was a good looking dude, and on the cover of like Screaming Life at Ultra Mega OK, he was cool with, appearing on the cover with the shirt off and, the sweat and going down his body, and he would perform in concert. And I think he definitely understood the impact that he had, on women and, and men too. Yeah. But it's not something that he was very comfortable with, because at the end of the day, the thing that mattered to him the most was really the music and the art. And I think that he was smart enough to know that, you got to package yourself sometimes in the music world to be understood or to be accepted. And he was willing to play the game, but it's not necessarily a role that defined him or that he wanted to define him.
Yeah, yeah. I like about Soundgarden is how they started is not how they ended up. Like there was this constant growth, and like it always felt pretty natural, I guess, even though there was some criticism that they maybe it became more pop or whatever. But
yeah, definitely. But it was a natural progression. That, like you said, it's they started off as this post-punk indie band on Sub Pop Records, and Sub Pop probably would not be Sub Pop without Soundgarden. If you read the book, you kind of get the story of the founder of Sub Pop seeing Soundgarden for the first time and what that meant to him and how he wanted to found a label because of that. But yeah, it was a very natural progression. They went from post-punk indie stuff, Husker Du sort of inspired stuff, Melvins inspired stuff. Well, not inspired, but they were kind of adjacent to the Melvins. To Meat Puppets was a big inspiration. So, but then they go on to harder rock edge and louder than love. Get more into the metal with Bad Motorfinger, more psychedelic with Super Unknown, a little deeper with Down on the Upside, and then they kind of disband. But there was always an evolution, and it was very natural, and it was mostly predicated about Chris becoming a better songwriter throughout the years. Those early years was more Kim and Hero influencing the music, and as Chris became more of a songwriter, playing with alternate tunings and different time signatures, and getting Matt Cameron in the band, who is one of the greatest drummers of all time. I mean, the way he kind of can keep different rhythms in his head and time signatures and stuff is just, I have a theory he's a math genius secretly, but I can't. Just he has an intrinsic knowledge for how rhythm works. And that was definitely a key weapon. And then getting Ben Shepherd in the band, who later on was, contributed a lot of great songs to that band's catalog and influenced the way they wrote and recorded. And it was a constant evolution, but it was one that wasn't trying to create a different sound. It just something that sort of happened naturally.
Okay. And you know what I didn't know until I read the book is how musical he was. Like his demos would be like, so fully realized, and he played all these different instruments and stuff. And like I feel like that's not something that you actually hear. It's like you hear about the great voice, and it's sort of like it stops there.
It does. And it's a show-stopping voice.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard when someone's so seemingly talented at one thing to realize, there's all these other things that are kind of going on underneath the surface. And teaching himself, like he was convinced, like, I'm never going to be, an Eddie Van Halen type shredder. Like, I got what I'm going to do, but I can write songs. So I'm going to tune every string to E and, see what that sounds like. And he would write a song based on just different new weird things that people had never really, kind of explored before in the rock realm. And they worked out for him. He could play a myriad of different instruments, and then he also knew when to, like, I can't play this part necessarily, so I'm going to find a person who can and have them play it to the best of their abilities.
Yeah. What do you think Soundgarden ended? Do you think it was a part of his restlessness of new sounds, new music? Yeah,
originally in 96, 97, after that final gig in Hawaii, I think that, they were all very burnt out. I think that they all, especially Chris, felt a lot of weight of responsibility. It became this machine of, that was kind of taking them rather than guiding them. And I think that they, and Chris specifically, wanted to do something differently. His life went through a tremendous period of flux after Soundgarden ended. Becoming a father, starting Audioslave, making a solo record with Alan Johannes and Natasha and Eleven, and he's kind of searching for, I wouldn't call it a midlife crisis, but he was definitely searching for something different. He wanted to do something differently, and he told the rest of the band that the band was ending, and it did. And then 13 years later, they got back together and created another album and toured again. But yeah, originally I think he just wanted different challenges and to do something different with his life.
And how do you feel? Do you have a favorite period of his, like between Audioslave, Soundgardens, or am I asking you to choose a child?
No, I will say that if you look at that, Bad Motorfinger is my favorite Chris Cornell album personally. Okay. I think that 4-song run at the beginning is just, it's almost unmatched. But if you look at, you want to talk about periods of songwriting, that period about 90 to 94, when he put out Louder Than Love, he worked on the single soundtrack, Temple of the Dog, he made Bad Motorfinger, and then it ended with Super Unknown. I don't know, you can judge those, the merits of those albums as much as you'd like, but I put that 5-album run, or that 5 collaboration, or let's say 4 1/4 the single soundtrack and seasons. But I'd stack that run of greatness against almost any artist that I can think of, honestly.
How do you think he did a solo album before he joined Audioslave, right?
Yes, Euphoria Morning.
Okay. How do you feel his solo albums stack up against his group work?
I think that his solo albums, there's lots to like there, especially the last one, A Higher Truth, is just the album he made with Brendan O'Brien. Those two clicked all through their life. Brendan O'Brien mixed Super Unknown. He worked on the third Audioslave record, Revelations. Chris knew that Brendan could get a great vocal out of him, which is something that he was struggled with that all the time. He felt like he could do his vocals better than most people, and he was usually right. He knew how to record himself. And I really love the Higher Truth album. And I feel like Carry On was a bit of a swing into pop music that maybe didn't work as well. Euphoria Morning has some great songs on it. Scream is, take or leave, whether you like that one or not. It's not necessarily my favorite, but he did seem to be someone who really operated well in a band environment and was a really great collaborator. Got the best out of the people around him, and almost felt like a responsibility to push himself harder in those in situations because he knew that maybe other people were relying on him. Okay. So his band work, it seemed, will always he was a band guy, and at the end of the day, you kind of stack the two together. But that's not to take away from his solo albums, which I'm sure that he enjoyed and loved in their own different ways.
Okay. For people who don't know about the Scream album, as I'm reading the book, I went back and listened to it. I feel like it was more like a songwriting issue as opposed to the sound. I don't know, what do you think about that album? It was produced by Timbaland.
It was produced by Timbaland. There's a lot of Ian Tedder from One Republic had a hand in it. Justin Timberlake contributed some background vocals on it. It was definitely a complete divergent shift away from anything ever. It's almost like 21 Pilots, like a precursor to that sort of thing. A lot of beat driven music with classic songwriting arrangement, singer-songwriting arrangement thrown over the top. It definitely, could have used for more maybe thought or I don't know, cohesion or whatever. But I appreciate the swing. Sometimes to have to say that, sometimes it doesn't work out. It's a fascinating album, and it didn't deserve the shit that he took for it.
No. So will you be doing a Justice for Scream?
You know what? I'll let someone else handle that.
Okay. I think you're missing a moment there, Corbin. I don't know.
You can take that one for me. How was that?
Okay. So what do there's like a thread throughout the book about his addiction issues. There was alcohol, OxyContin. When did that start? Were you able to find that out?
It started young. I mean, his father was alcoholic. His brother Peter has talked in the past about his father's alcohol issues. Chris has alluded to a lot of tension between him and his father, and from a young age, growing up in the 60s and the early 70s, parents didn't have as much accountability over their kids as they do these days. So around their neighborhood too, there was a lot of older brothers that stuff would just go around, weed, pills, that sort of thing, and I think it was from around the age of 12 or 14 or so, he had a bad experience with PCP, and he got clean for the longest time, just around that age. So from the entire time that he was in Soundgarden, he definitely became more dependent on alcohol, but he never really did much hard drugs, never really smoked weed, didn't write on any illicit substances. But after that band came to an end and he was Audioslave, he fell back into alcoholism and started taking a lot of different substances, and then got clean again after going into rehab in Malibu, and for the rest worked really hard on his sobriety, and he struggled with some few times, but that's a hard disease. My mom is alcoholic, and my mom had some addiction issues, and I try to be as empathetic as possible to those sorts of battles while I was writing the book, because it's not always something that's in your control, and it's something you have to fight against every single day. And a lot of people don't understand how hard and challenging that can be. And the fact that he conquered it on several occasions in his life, I think is really admirable.
Did you feel like, does that enhance the connection to him, with your mother and knowing like his issues that he battled?
I think it allowed me to appreciate, what he was able to accomplish even as those issues were happening. It's hard when you're trying to write songs, you have people dependent on you, you have your family dependent on you, you have this whole machine surrounding you. escape and have a drink, or you just want to, pop a pill or something like that, and that's always in the back of your head. And, I don't have those addiction issues as much, but I know people that do. And, and it really, I did respect the fact and appreciate the fact, he was able to overcome that in a lot of ways and produce some amazing art, but then also, be there for the people who needed him when they needed him and overcome a lot of those challenges throughout his life.
Okay. Do we know did he have demons that he was battling all his life that might have
I think that he
contributed to
definitely
that?
had episodes of depression. He's talked about it, especially, near the end of Soundgarden. He said, I started drinking more, and alcohol is a depressant, and I got depressed. Yeah, that's a verbatim quote. That's definitely something that I think that he ran up against. And demons is kind of a loaded word, because it's just the holes in your brain, how they balance out and things like that. And having to compensate for that can be challenging. Sometimes you wake up and you just don't have it that morning, and but there's a lot of people depending on you, so you got to get your stuff together and push forward. And he did a really good job of doing that. But at the same time, embracing that darker aspect of himself and fueling it into music that people can understand and appreciate and empathize with, and maybe feel that someone understood what they were going through. That was kind of that was his gift to the world, I suppose.
Yeah. You made it's in the book. The line between Andrew Wood and Lane Staley, all these people he was close to who died had addiction issues. And there was Kurt Cobain, all these people he was friends or acquaintances with. And it was sort of sad, seeing the connection from, what happened to them and how he ended up too.
It is, yeah. I mean, you never want to bury a friend, and he had to bury a lot of his friends in his life. And it seemed weird, anytime, when Kurt Cobain died, I think Soundgarden was in Paris. Yeah. When Andrew Wood died, Soundgarden was in Brooklyn. And he was always away whenever those tragedies would happen. And he visited Andrew Wood in the hospital before he technically passed. But, the incident happened while he was away. And he was always someone that ever, Shannon Hoon from Blind Lemon died, or Jeff Buckley, his friend, passed away. Yeah. People came to him as this, as this pillar of, what are we going to do, Chris? And he always had a kind word and thought, and he always opened his arms. And, he had this dream once about Lane Staley, where he remembered after Lane had died, he was sitting in Pearl Jam's manager's house, Kelly Curtis, everyone was there. And he remembered that Lane ran through the door weeping. And after Andrew Wood died. Okay. Lane Staley ran through the door weeping, just sad. And Chris sat on the couch and didn't move and just watched as Lane cried. And he always regretted for the rest of his life that he didn't just get up and give Lane a hug, just to have someone say that, hey, I'm here for you. And that's kind of the person he was, that, as much as, he was hurting, it haunted him that he couldn't be there for someone who was probably hurting, not maybe as much because he didn't know Andrew Wood as much, but still he saw that and he wanted to help, and it bothered him. Yeah. Cause
they were roommates, right?
They were. Lived on Melrose Avenue together. Andrew Wood was in Mother Love Bone, and before that with Malfunction, and they had this house together on near Capitol Hill, and they wrote songs back and forth together, and they'd show each other stuff, and their girlfriends would come by, their bands would rehearse there, and they became really, really tight. Not like a band themselves, but Chris likened that relationship toward not like a Lennon and McCartney thing, but they definitely had a different thing that people around the scene didn't have together. And they both admired each other for different ways. Andrew Wood always admired Chris's sophistication in terms of writing songs and bridges and choruses and progressions and stuff. And at the same time, Chris always admired Andrew Wood for his voluminous output. He just wrote songs like a madman, just churning them out. And Chris always envied that thing. So they kind of filled in sort of different gaps for each other and understood each other to a way that, other people around the scene didn't, even if they were in different bands. Yeah.
What do you think? We're coming up on the 3-year anniversary of his death, right?
Yeah, we just had that. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think is going to be his legacy? Maybe it's too soon to tell, but what do you think it would look like his legacy that would look like?
That's a great question. I hope his legacy extends far beyond the his death, and the way he went out. And I hope that people will forever remember that voice. I hope that people will forever respect the songwriting, because you listen to a song like Fell in Black Days, you listen to a song like I Am the Highway, and you listen to a song like Seasons, and just the way he built music, the way he sung, the way he used melody, the way he took chances. I hope that his legacy is really in the songwriting more than anything else. I mean, even more than his voice. I really think that people hopefully come to realize what an incredible songwriter he was, and that catalog of music that he built. I hope that's what his legacy is.
Yeah. Because I didn't know until reading the book how much he wrote the songs himself. Like, I always thought it was just like a group band effort through all the groups, and it's like he's writing so many of the songs by himself.
Oh yeah, for sure. And but at the same time, like Somewhere is inspired by like, a tuning that Ben Shepherd had put together. And Chris is like, oh, let me take that and do something with it, and he was always constantly bouncing ideas off people. And Kim Thayil was his number one end of the day biggest guitar influence. The way Kim was adventurous, the way that he approached the guitar, the way things that he taught Chris about different things. There is no Chris Cornell the way we understand him without the impact Kim Thayil had on him from an early age, and all those guys really, but him and Kim definitely had a bond that is almost unexplainable, like the way they influenced each other, the way they worked together, and the way they respect each other, and it's just those two are going to be bonded together forever.
Do you if for somebody new to Chris Cornell, what would you recommend?
Oh man. Well, I mean, you can always go to the Essentials playlist, which is always a good primer. But I would say it just depends on what you're into. If you're into more conventional, like just straight ahead, psychedelic rock, like Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd or something, you can't go wrong with Super Unknown. That album is top to bottom a classic. Same with Audioslave. Honestly, if you're driving down the car, there's almost no better album to throw in the rotation than that first Audioslave record. It's so savage and then same thing with Bad Motorfinger. There's almost no place you can go wrong. I would say that Bad Motorfinger, Super Unknown, Temple of the Dog, and the first Audioslave record. I mean, I would check those four out and get back to me.
And what was this process like for you writing this book? You spent 3 years on it?
Roughly, almost, yeah. About 2.5 years. It was definitely a challenge. It was just so much information, so many. Because you're not just learning about Chris, you're learning about the people that knew Chris. You have to understand the environment he came from, Seattle in the 70s and 80s. You have to understand, the elements that impacted him, his family life. You have to understand, why he made the choices he made. What was happening in music at that time. Why was Lollapalooza in '92 important? What was, there's how did Napster impact his career? Where Your Morning came out, no one was really buying CDs as much anymore. There's so many elements just outside of Chris Cornell that you have to really learn about and drill down to make him to understand him in a certain context. So it was very challenging just in terms of researching and interviewing people and amassing this wealth of knowledge, and then trying to make a coherent narrative out of it that is interesting and hopefully attention grabbing that people want to continue reading. It was definitely hard, but at the end of the day, I just really, really, really wanted to honor Chris's memory and show people why he was important.
What's interesting is as a sort of like a backstory of reading the book is how that you really get to see how the music industry has changed, like say from the beginning of his career. Because I forget which album it sold, 160,000, 161,000, maybe an Audioslave album, the first week. And it was came in at number 7. I was thinking now the number one album could be 20, 30,000 copies. Totally. And they couldn't even get to number 1 with 161,000 copies. Pre-2000 or something.
Yeah, it's wild. And the way the streaming numbers are gained these days, and package bundling and stuff, it's back then even that 165,000 really meant something. It meant that a kid went to the store and bought that album. It didn't mean, that they bought a t-shirt and the album came with it, or a concert and the album came with it and stuff too. So, and those numbers are even today are inflated. And it's wild to think about how much needed to go into pushing an album out and how little you got back, even as you sold a tremendous amount of records. Yeah.
Did you learn anything about yourself writing this book through this process?
I learned that my capacity to keep sane is higher than I expected. It was definitely a rough road, especially in the later chapters when I knew that I'd have to really get into some darker headspaces to write about the end of his life. And it's not something I was looking forward to at all. You live with a person in your head for a long, long time, and you're researching all these amazing, fantastic things they did. They're funny, and I wouldn't say I know Chris Cornell the way that people in his life knew him. I would never make that proclamation. I'm not that egotistical, but I really did live with the guy in my head for a long, long time. And when it got near the end, I just felt that sadness all over again that I felt, when I first learned that he had died, and trying to live through that and push through that to try to finish the book was really a challenge. I hope that I did, that particular part justice and was empathetic and sympathetic to, a lot of people in his life. And that was my only hope at the end of the day. But, I did learn that, that I guess I just have, I don't know. I don't know what I learned about myself as much as I guess I'm stronger than I thought it was.
Yeah,
it sounds so
that's good
to say, but it was definitely a challenge. And it was, I was in the Army. I've been to Iraq. I've done a lot of hard things in my life, but writing this book was by far the hardest thing I've ever done. And I hope that people enjoy it and learn a lot about Chris Cornell.
Yeah, you did a great job, man, Corbin. I enjoyed it. Yeah,
Thank
I liked
so
about you. I
much.
mean, it really could have been a chance to be like tabloidy or sensational, and you never did that with the book. It always felt like you imparted the knowledge, but it always felt very respectful. It wasn't. Like,
I hope
titillating.
so. Like, I really hope that was also my goal. Is there's a lot of people out there who are fascinated with the darker aspects of his life and love to speculate on things and even afterwards and everything that came after. And really, the narrative ends with Chris, and I didn't want to just make it this whole tell-all, talking to people who have a bone to pick or have an agenda. And I didn't go into any agendas. I just try to keep it as much focused on his life and the music as I could, because that's really what his legacy is. It's not the way his life ended. It's not the challenges he faced. It's the music that he made. That's why people are interested in Chris Cornell. And I always try to keep the spotlight on that.
Yeah. Well, you did a great job doing that, man. And the book is out July 28th. Is that correct?
It is indeed.
A week
July
after his
28th.
Birthday. A week after
his birthday. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
You got it. There it is.
God, did I leave anything out, man? This is great.
No, I mean, I think we covered it all. Chris Cornell rules. I hope that people understand that Chris Cornell rules, and I hope they buy my book and see how hard he rules. That's the only hope I have.
And people can connect with you online. How?
Yeah, the best way to get to me is Twitter, at Corbin Reiff, CorbinReiff. I'm just posting stuff on that all the time. Questions, fun, interesting, whatever. I don't know. You can enter my brain and see how messed up I am on that site.
Okay. And how did I forget to ask you? Total fucking Godhead is the title. Why that title?
Okay, this is actually a good story. So back around 86, I think. 85, 86, Soundgarden put out this compilation album called Deep Six. They were part of it. All these other bands were on it. Malfunction was on it. The U-Men were on it. All these underground Seattle bands. And in this column called Sub Pop, Bruce Pavitt, who founded Sub Pop Records, reviewed the album in this alt weekly called The Rocket that kind of went around Seattle. And he reviewed the album at the end. He called it Total Fucking Godhead. And the name kind of just stuck to Soundgarden subsequently after that. And when I was thinking about Chris, I was thinking about a way that what can I say about him that really captures the vibe of what he was like in life as an artist. And I couldn't think of anything better than just Total Fucking Godhead. And that's what I went with.
Well, it's an unforgettable title, man.
Thank you so much. That was the hope.
Sure. Well, thank you, Corbin. It was a pleasure. I enjoyed meeting you.
Hey, it was a pleasure.
If we can call it
I can
meeting.
talk about Chris Cornell. It's surprising this conversation lasts 3 hours. I can keep going.
If it's Tina Turner, I would be doing, it'd be like a 3-hour conversation.
Exactly.
So I totally understand, man. Well, thank you for doing this, man. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. It was a blast.
Sure. And I can't wait for that Justice for Scream. #Justice for Scream.
There you go. There you go. Timberland knows what's up. We're just trying to keep up.
Yes. Sounds good. Be well, man. Be well.
Thank you so much.
Sure. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Corbin Reiff. Make sure you get the book, Total Fucking Godhead. It is a great book. You will enjoy it. If you'd like to find out more about what I'm doing, check out the website, talkmusictalk.com, for more podcast information and to stream over 200 episodes. Also, follow me on Instagram at thisisboice. Since March, during the lockdown, I have been doing IG live conversations with past Talk Music Talk guests. Over 25 at this point. I believe you will enjoy those, so check it out. You can also subscribe to the podcast pretty much everywhere. Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. Just search for Talk Music Talk. You can find the podcast on SoundCloud as well at soundcloud.com/This Is Boice. There is also a free app wherever you like to get your apps. Just search for Talk Music Talk, and wherever you happen to be listening, please leave a 5-star rating and or review because it helps to expose the show to brand new listeners. All links in the show notes, of course. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, and there will be a next time, this one's for you, Liz.